So after we know how Angular Material creates dynamic components, let's take a look under the hood. I have created the same component again, or the same test again, and as soon as I click Open Modal, we now load a different component into the browser. If I look at the code, first we have this, we load this component. That's the component that we're going to load in. This is just an empty component that doesn't do much at the moment. And then on the start page, the page that is effectively loaded, we have this Open Modal button. And as soon as we click it, we go onto this Open Click, Open Dialog method. Still the same as before. The difference in here is that this time we do not use the Angular Material stuff, but we have written this by ourselves. So the first thing you have is inside the constructor is a view container ref. The view container ref is a reference to the component itself, sort of the native element or part of the native element of the common component that we are working on. And then the second thing is we have a reference to a component factory resolver. The component factory resolver is something that comes from the module, and all the declarations contain components, but to create those components we also need a factory besides that. And this factory is stored in the Angular environment, and you get a reference to this component factory resolver by the constructor, so you can actually include this in the constructor or inject this in the constructor, and it will be usable. So the first thing we do is we use the component factory resolver to create or to resolve the component factory of a specific component. So this thing here is actually not an instance of the component we want to create, but it's just a reference to the type of the component that we want to create. It's the one thing that we have seen before. It's the component that we want to create. And then when we have this, the factory actually, the factory for this dynamic component, we use this on the view container ref, so the component itself that we're working on, to create a component. And what this command will do is it will attach the newly created component to the end of the component that we're working on. And in this moment, we keep this as a component reference, but this is not used at the moment. So we're not doing anything with that. So the important thing are those marked lines that I have here. And then what this creates, if we reload the page here, if I click on Open Modal, it will actually create this component dynamically and load it into the position that we needed. Now, this is a good thing, so we know that it is working, but we can do additional stuff with it. So what I want to do is I want to use this text variable, and I want to hand this over to the component that we are additionally creating. And so currently there's nothing in there. If I load the component, this thing is sort of still empty, and I additionally need to hand over the variable from the outside into this component. So what I'm doing here is that I am, wait a minute, I have to copy this little text here. So what I want to do is I want to use the component ref, which is now actually an instance of the component that we have created. And I want to hand it over a variable. We had this input on the dynamic loading test loaded component, this thing here. And I want to hand it over a variable from the outside. And we can test if this is working. And if I click it, it does. So on the next line, we have this Cowabunga. That's the text we have given in. So we know it's working. What's also important here is that this is the instance of the component and this is the input variable. We can, or Angular at this particular point where we're here right now, does not actually make a difference whether this is an input or an output or any other component. So whatever is declared in here, whatever is declared inside the component, input, text, output, your emitter, some variable, can be actually overwritten from the outside. And this also opens certain possibilities for the future. Now this is working well, it's working really fine, but when we are looking closer at it, we don't want to, well, use this view component ref, container ref. It's sort of a technical detail for dynamic components. It works, it's the way we used to create those components, but I think we can do better, and I would like to show you how we do this.